We're here at Republic Nightclub with Judge Jules, host of the weekend warm-up on BBC Radio. First trip over to Canada and specifically here to Republic, the new club. What do you think of it so far?
It's a good venue. I mean, it's kind of strange because when you come to Canada, you inevitably you make comparisons with the US because the US is situated next door. But the thing I don't like about a lot of US clubs, even though the atmosphere is very good, is that they tend to be very dark. And actually, you don't need a club to be dark. If you spend a bit of money on lighting and it's kind of almost a panoramic sort of lighting approach, and lighting is very important, then you get a very good atmosphere. And I think clearly money has been spent, A, and B, money has been really spent quite sensibly and wisely. So it's a great space.
Oh, $1 million plus for the lighting and the sound here alone. So excellent on Republic's behalf there. Playing abroad, how is it compared to the UK? Do you find your music's not as well known outside of the islands, or is it something universal in that sense?
I wouldn't say that my music's not as well known. I think if you play the right records, they achieve a reaction wherever you go. What's different is clearly in some locations you're better known than others, and being on national radio and if you're on Radio 1, it's quite a high-profile situation to be as a DJ. You're better known, and then you can go to other situations where you aren't so well known. And Toronto's kind of not, I wouldn't say I'm at the pinnacle of tabloid presence, but at the same time people know what I do, whereas you can kind of go to the US and play the coastal cities and everybody knows you, and go to middle America and people can be, you're almost sort of selling yourself in the way that a DJ who's only been doing it for 18 months would be doing. So yeah, I think that keeps you very hungry.
You're making a return to Ibiza and your residency for the summer. Any predictions on a track of the summer?
I think as far as Ibiza is concerned, because the season is relatively long, it's almost a third of the year, it's very difficult when you're still not quite into the summer to start predicting what's going to be the big summer tune. Normally it's the one that kind of arrives in early July and then obliterates the island for all of July and all of August, so we'll have to hold fire a little bit on that.
Your impressions on Philo and Perry's new track, Dancing with the Devil?
Philo and Perry's new track, Dance with the Devil, has a really good remix by Flipside, which I sort of got and re-edited and has worked very well for me. And previous to that, I played the other version, but the new one really works well. And without sounding like a boring DJ who's just talking about individual mixes, it's incredible how you can have heard a good record and think maybe it's a 7 out of 10, and suddenly a remix comes along and you're like, wow, this is really blowing me away. And that's the situation with that particular tune.
Yeah, they were in town actually 2 days ago, and I was chatting with them. They're from New York City,
right.
So they have a residency here in Toronto at a place called Viva Nightclub. So, and I mentioned it to them. They said, "Yeah, I saw that track listing on there," and they liked it. So, what do you see as the next big step in the electronic scene?
When you come from the UK, London in particular, a city that accommodates clubs that cater for every small, tiny subgenre of dance music, it's very difficult to imagine that great big pie of dance music is going to be sliced into even smaller pieces. It probably won't. Strength is in diversity, and if you're in London, UK, and Toronto's a good example of that as well. And most of the major cities in the world have got deep house, funky house, vocal house, Chicago house, drum and bass, jungle, trance, commercial trance. I mean, the list, I could really bore you, and the list goes on and on and on. And provided you've got that diversity, you have incredible strength. And I don't see that there's going to be a huge new subgenre of music that appears that nobody's predicted. But at the same time, as long as there's so many diverse different areas that are exciting individuals, then we can't ask for much more.
House or trance? What do you define yourself as a DJ-wise? Because I know on your show you play a lot of house, yet when you're out you play a lot of trance in that sense. And what do you think is the better party style of music?
I mean, I've been a trance DJ since day one of trance, and I play house because the time my radio show's on necessitates playing house, and I'm lucky enough to like it. There's no way you could play a style of music if you didn't feel it and understand it. And sometimes you can be marked down if you're not a real specialist and you're more of a generalist. But ultimately, I don't think that I think if you look at clubbers, probably 80% of clubbers are actually into the best of what's good, regardless of its particular genre. So I'll always, club-wise, I will always be a trance DJ, and there will always be the odd occasion where I do a house set. But I just think it's good to try and keep your ears and eyes and mind open to all styles of music.
You're very open and interactive with your fans and listeners compared to some other DJs. Do you find this takes up most of your time and is more of a job, or is it really fun and games?
It varies on a weekly basis, but it can be anywhere between 500 and 1,500 emails from people a week, and I do respond to all of them. And thankfully, I spend a great deal of time on flights. Tomorrow will be the 14th day in a row that I've taken a flight somewhere, and on many of those days I've taken more than one because of been connections. So that does afford you an awful lot of time to answer emails, and sometimes it can feel like a job, and it can piss my wife off a bit, because if you catch me in a period where I'm at home for 3 days, then I'm still getting the emails. They don't stop because I don't happen to be getting on a plane. But I really think it's important. It's it gives me feedback about what I'm doing right and occasionally what I'm doing wrong. B, it's so easy to stand there on a DJ platform in a sort of semi-public situation and not actually have a clue what people are thinking, because in certain clubs you're quite removed from the crowd and it's difficult to actually gauge immediately what people have appreciated about what you're doing. So I just think whilst hopefully others appreciate the fact that I respond to every email I receive, I benefit from it as much as they do.
Do you have free time? And if so, what's your favorite hobby?
I've got 2 kids. I've got 2 small kids. One's 5 and one's a baby. And if you travel as much as I do, I get 200 flights a year at least. I answer all these emails. I try and keep my website interactive. I make records. I've got an album coming out. I run a clothing label. I own a restaurant. So there's a lot of stuff going on in my life. But clearly, the only remaining time that I've got will be devoted to my kids, who I love like any parent would.
You mentioned new album. Is this going to be a single on your own as an individual, or are we looking at a lot of collaborations? And if so, who?
It's coming out under my name. I produced and made lots of records, but just about all of them in the past have been under an assortment of monikers such as Highgate, Angelic, VPL. There's quite a large list, and I just thought, well, hey, why not actually use my own name? It was the issue with using my own name before was the fact that I'm on the radio in the UK on a state-owned radio station. There's a kind of conflict of interest to be playing your own records, particularly when you're flagging them up as being by you yourself under your own name. But talked about it with a couple of people at the station. They were like, well, as long as you're not really, as we say in the UK, taking the piss, as long as you're not playing your own records throughout the show, 1 or 2 don't really matter. So I've decided to start making records under my own name, and there's an album forthcoming at the tail end of the year. I've done some collaborations, one with BK, one with Dumond, another one with a guy called Michael Woods, and the remainder of my own. And hopefully people will like it.
You mentioned What's in Your Head. How's that doing in your opinion?
Once I've made a record and I've played it for myself, I don't really pay a great deal of attention regarding how it sells, because I'm not in the business of music. I'm a DJ and I make music because I love it. And I've had a number of records that have sold commercially very well, and others that have done nothing. But very rarely do I pay any attention to what they're doing beyond the level of release, because that's not what interests me. What interests me is making good records. Certainly plenty of people have sent me emails saying they've bought it, so that would suggest it's doing okay.
Where do you get most of your music from? Does it come directly from the artist? Does it come from DJ pools or online purchasing, or what?
I get approximately, on average, because clearly the average varies on a weekly basis, about 200 to 250 tracks a week. About 50 to 100 come as MP3s, because I've really been trying to push that, because it's such a user-friendly way of getting records. Another 30 to 40 are bought by somebody who works for me, who goes down to local record stores and picks things up, and the remainder come through as promos in a conventional sense, either as CDs or as vinyl.
Alright, short answer questions here. What gear do you use and prefer?
Well, I only play CDs because I edit all my own tracks. pretty much 98% of what I play is my own edits of things, which means you can't use vinyl, you can only use CDs or an MP3 player, but I use the Pioneer CDJ 1000s, which is the revolution, the reinvention of the wheel as far as DJs are concerned. And I was, like many DJs, somebody who said that I would never ever play CDs, and here 18 months down the line I find myself doing just what I said I would never do, and to the level of the fact that I almost would have wanted to stand up and have a fight with you if you suggested you'd had the show me the kind of indignity of suggesting I would ever play CDs, but I am, and they continue to grow in support amongst DJs. I mean, so many DJs I know have turned to only playing CDs or playing the vast majority of CDs.
Most underrated DJ in the world?
My good friend John Kelly, who's from the UK, who's probably, I may or may not ever have played in Canada, who I think is a phenomenally talented DJ, but in the current climate you do need to make records and you do need to put out mix CDs, and it's part of a bigger picture, and if you haven't done that you're not going to get anything like the recognition that you potentially could get purely off the back of being a decent DJ.
Champions League, AC or Liverpool?
I support Arsenal, and Arsenal have perpetually done very badly in the Champions League. I'd like to think it's Liverpool, and it's good because it's going to be my first sort of proper night home before going out. I've got 2 nights off. I've been in North America for 5 days. I was in Europe for about 6 days before then, and then I've got 2 nights home, and then I'm going to Paris to play again, and then it all kind of starts again, the DJing thing. And I've deliberately taken the Champions League final night off, and I want it to be Liverpool. If it was Man United, I definitely would have wanted anybody to beat them because I hate Man United. If it was Chelsea, I would be sort of ambivalent. I can tolerate Chelsea now because they're from London and they've generally got London-based supporters. But with Liverpool, I really want them to win because they deserve it. They've been a sleeping giant for ages. Sadly, that's my heart's view. My head's view says that AC Milan will be victors.
Well, you already know the FA Cup final, right? What happened? Okay, well, there you go. Congratulations, Arsenal. Best venue in the world to play at?
I think Gatecrasher in Sheffield, which used to be my weekly residency, then became a sort of occasional venue for what's known as Gatecrasher. They renamed the venue Crasher, so there's a bit of a confusion between the two. But it's one of those places that's, you're very close to the crowd. You've got an unbelievable panoramic view of what's going on, and it's just got an incredible atmosphere.
As we eye the money, Walter getting it out. I guess finally to finish up, where do you see FM radio going? First of all with the BBC, and then just in general with the switch to satellite radio coming in the near future.
Well, satellite radio doesn't exist in Europe at all. It's digital radio that's the revolution. I wouldn't say is accurate. The only thing that digital radio allows is A, marginally better signal quality, but B, there's an A, B and a C actually, the ability to check your tracks as they happen, and the ability to divide the waveband into much smaller blocks. Therefore, there can be, in theory, many more radio stations. In the UK, we are relatively well served by dance music being supported on the radio. I'm not that familiar with Canadian radio, but certainly in the US, it's sorely under-supported, largely because it kind of falls between the cracks of what the kind of mass media Viacom stroke Clear Channel owned stations consider what a station should be. If you're not a black station, a country station, a rock station, a classic station, you fall between the cracks. And unfortunately, that's, I think, what dance music's done in the US. I'm not so familiar with Canada, so pardon my ignorance. But the more radio there is, and the more accessible it is to sort of small individuals who care about music and don't just apply a formulaic business model and business plan to a station, the better for all of us.
Well, to enlighten you, the US has 7 dance stations, full-time electronic. Canada has 0. And there won't be any because we're required to play Canadian content music, which means Canadian produces Canadian artists, and 30% of all music has to be that, and it's pretty much impossible to find 30% of Canadian producers.
The French have the same policy.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, And best of luck at the rest of the summer and everything going well.
Thank you kindly. Cheers.
And just before if I was wondering if you could do a line or two for me. So it's DJ Amps, Amplified Radio.
AMS.
AMPZ.
Sorry, you sent me emails.
Yeah, no worries.
How you doing? This is Judge Jules, and you're listening to DJ Amps on Amplified Radio.